My name is Cassandra Reynolds, 35 years old, and I always thought I was a good daughter. I spent my whole life trying to please my mother Evelyn, planning the perfect birthday dinner at her favorite restaurant in Boston. When she raised her crystal glass for a toast, I expected gratitude. Instead, she looked me dead in the eyes and said, "The best gift, you leaving my life." What she did not know was how completely I would take her words to heart. Before I tell you how I disappeared from my mother's life, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and subscribe if you've ever had to cut ties with toxic family. I guess to understand why those words shattered me that night, you need to know our history. My childhood memories are filled with my mother's disapproving glances and cutting remarks. Nothing I did was ever good enough. My artwork was messy, my grades were never perfect enough, and my clothes were never stylish enough. While other mothers hung crayon drawings on refrigerators with pride, mine would point out every flaw before tossing them in the trash. "Stand up straight, Cassandra. No one likes a girl with bad posture," she would say in public, yanking my shoulders back so hard it left red marks. "Smile more, but not like that. You look ridiculous." These constant corrections became the soundtrack of my childhood. My father was different. Dad was warm, encouraging, and quick to praise my efforts. "That's my bright girl," he would say, his eyes crinkling at the corners when I showed him my science fair project or a story I had written. He was the buffer between Mom's cold criticism and my fragile self-esteem. But when I was 12, everything changed. Dad died suddenly of a heart attack. I found him collapsed in our backyard while Mom was at her weekly bridge club. I still remember screaming for help, the neighbor rushing over to perform CPR, the ambulance lights flashing against our house. And I remember my mother's first words to me at the hospital. "Why weren't you watching him more carefully? You knew his heart was weak." Those words planted themselves deep in my psyche. Somehow in my mother's narrative I became partially responsible for my father's death. It was the beginning of a guilt she would cultivate in me for decades. My teenage years became an endless quest for approval that never came. I joined every club, maintained a 4.0 GPA, became captain of the debate team and editor of the school newspaper. Each achievement was met with "Jennifer's daughter got accepted to Harvard," or "Lisa's daughter has much better stage presence in her recitals." Despite my mother's discouragement, I earned a full scholarship to Northwestern University. "You will probably drop out after a semester," she said, when I showed her the acceptance letter. "College is harder than you think." But I did not drop out. I graduated summa cum laude with a double major in finance and economics. Mom did not attend my graduation, claiming she had a migraine. My relationship suffered the most from her interference. At 22, I dated Michael, a kind medical student who my friends adored. When he came to dinner, Mom spent the evening subtly undermining me. "Cassandra was always so awkward with boys," she told him over dessert. "I am surprised she caught your attention." A week later, she called him privately to tell him about my emotional issues and how I needed more therapy before being ready for a serious relationship. He broke things off shortly after. This pattern repeated with Ryan at 25 and James at 28. Each time, my mother found ways to sabotage whatever happiness I had found. "I am just looking out for you," she would say. "You have terrible judgment in men." Despite it all, I built a successful career as a financial advisor. By 35, I was handling portfolios for high net worth clients and had been promoted to senior advisor at my firm. I purchased a beautiful condo in Boston's Back Bay neighborhood and had created a stable life for myself. And still, I supported my mother. After Dad died, she never worked, living off his life insurance and later his pension. When those funds dwindled, I began supplementing her income. I paid her property taxes, covered her utilities, and funded her extravagant lifestyle. Every Sunday I would drive to her house in Brookline, listen to her complain about her neighbors, her friends, and most often me. This year, for her 65th birthday, I planned something special. I reserved a private room at Fleming's Steakhouse, her favorite restaurant. I invited her closest friends, arranged for a professional photographer, and ordered a custom cake from the bakery she had mentioned once in passing. For months, I had been working with a jeweler to restore my grandmother's sapphire bracelet, a family heirloom my mother had always coveted, but my grandmother had left to me. I decided it was time to give it to her, hoping this generous gesture would finally earn her approval. "This birthday will be different," I told my therapist the week before. "I think she will finally see how much I care." My therapist gave me a concerned look but said nothing. Deep down, I knew I was setting myself up for disappointment. But hope is a stubborn thing. The evening of my mother's birthday, everything at Fleming's was perfect. The private dining room gleamed with candlelight, reflecting off crystal and fine china. Centerpieces of white roses and hydrangeas, her favorite flowers, adorned the tables. The chef had prepared her favorite appetizers, and the bartender had stocked extra bottles of the Cabernet she preferred. I arrived an hour early to ensure everything was perfect. My heart raced with anticipation and anxiety as I straightened the place cards and adjusted the lighting. The restaurant manager assured me everything would be flawless. "Your mother must be very special," he said, smiling. "She is," I replied automatically, though my stomach tightened with unspoken complications. At 7 o'clock, sharp guests began arriving. My mother's friends greeted me warmly, many commenting on how wonderful it was that I had arranged such a lovely evening. "Your mother is so lucky to have you," said Eleanor, her oldest friend. I smiled politely, though inside I wondered if my mother shared that sentiment. At 7:15, my mother arrived. She wore an expensive black dress I had purchased for her last Christmas, her silver hair perfectly styled. I moved to greet her with a hug, but she offered her cheek for a kiss instead. "The valet took forever," were her first words to me, "and this room is too dark. How will anyone see properly?" "I can ask them to adjust the lighting," I offered quickly. She sighed. "Never mind. It is fine. Who selected these flowers? Hydrangeas make me sneeze." They had been her favorites for as long as I could remember. I had watched her plant them in our garden every spring throughout my childhood, but I said nothing, just signaled the waiter to bring her a glass of wine. The dinner proceeded with my mother holding court among her friends. She barely acknowledged my presence, except to ask me to tell the waiter her steak was overcooked, though I could see it was perfectly medium rare as she had requested. After the main course, before dessert was served, I stood to present her gift. The small blue velvet box sat heavy in my hands as I approached her chair. "Mom," I said, my voice stronger than I felt, "I wanted to give you something special for your 65th birthday." I handed her the box. This was grandmother's bracelet. I had it restored, and the clasp replaced with white gold. The table fell silent as she opened the box. The sapphires caught the light twinkling against the white gold settings. It was truly beautiful, and I had spent thousands having it professionally restored by one of Boston's top jewelers. My mother looked at it for a long moment, then closed the box with a snap. "Your grandmother should have left this to me in the first place," she said flatly. "She always did favor you inappropriately." The table grew uncomfortably quiet. Eleanor, sitting beside my mother, touched her arm gently. "Evelyn, it is a beautiful gift." My mother placed the box on the table without another word. My cheeks burned with humiliation as I returned to my seat. When the cake arrived, glowing with candles, everyone sang "Happy Birthday." My mother smiled for the photographer, then stood to make a toast. "Thank you all for coming tonight," she said, her voice carrying across the now silent room. "It is nice to be surrounded by true friends on my birthday." She did not look at me. "As I get older, I find myself valuing authenticity more and more." She raised her glass higher and finally turned her gaze to me. What happened next plays in slow motion in my memory. "If I were to wish for a gift this year," she continued, her eyes cold, "the best gift would be for certain people to just leave my life entirely. No more pretense, no more obligation. Just freedom from relationships that were never meant to be." The room went completely still. Her friends shifted uncomfortably in their seats, some looking down at their plates, others exchanging glances. There was no mistaking her meaning. To another year, she finished taking a sip of her wine, as if she had not just publicly rejected her only child. I sat frozen, unable to move or speak. The cake sat untouched before us as the photographer, sensing the tension, quietly packed up his equipment and left. For the remainder of the evening, my mother chatted with her friends as if nothing had happened. I moved through the motions of hosting my body on autopilot while my mind replayed her words over and over. The drive to take her home was silent. When we arrived at her house, she gathered her things, including the bracelet box, which she had not opened again. "Dinner was adequate," she said as she opened the car door. "Next time, choose a better restaurant. Fleming's has gone downhill." I could not help myself. "Did you mean what you said about wanting me out of your life?" She paused, one foot on the curb. "Cassandra, do not be so sensitive. I was making a general statement." It did not feel general, Mom. It felt very specific. She sighed heavily. "If you choose to take everything personally, that is your problem. But yes, our relationship has always been a burden. I did my duty raising you. I am not obligated to pretend we have some special bond now." "I pay your bills," I said quietly. "I maintain your house. I take you to every doctor's appointment. And you never let me forget it, do you?" she snapped. "You think your financial support buys you the right to be in my life? That is your father in you always keeping score." She slammed the car door and walked to her house without looking back. I sat in the driveway for nearly 20 minutes, tears streaming down my face before I could compose myself enough to drive home. That night, lying in bed, I realized a fundamental truth nothing would ever change. No achievement, no gift, no sacrifice would ever be enough to make my mother love me. For 35 years, I had been running on a hamster wheel, exhausting myself for an impossible goal. As dawn broke, I made a decision that would change both our lives forever. I did not sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad making lists and plans until the sun rose by 6 a.m. I had a complete strategy for disappearing from my mother's life, not just emotionally, but practically and financially as well. First, I called my office and left a message for my boss explaining I needed to take 2 weeks of emergency personal leave. I had accumulated months of unused vacation time over the years, always too busy caring for my mother to use it. Next, I contacted James Wilson, a realtor I had helped purchase investment properties. "I need to sell my condo quickly and discreetly," I told him when he called back. "No public listings, no open houses. Find a private buyer willing to pay cash, even if it means taking slightly below market value." "Are you in some kind of trouble, Cassandra?" he asked, concerned. "No trouble," I assured him. "Just making necessary changes." By noon, I had an appointment with my financial advisor, Gregory Peters. I arrived at his office with a detailed list of accounts and assets. "I need to untangle my finances from my mother's," I explained. "Every account, every automatic payment, every financial connection." Gregory reviewed my documents with a professional eye. "This is extensive," he noted. "You are currently paying for her property taxes, utilities, credit card minimums, car insurance, and medical copays." "Yes, and I want it all stopped immediately." "May I ask why?" "This is quite sudden." "It is time for both of us to live independently," I said simply. We spent 3 hours restructuring my financial life. I froze the joint checking account where I deposited money for her expenses. I canceled the automatic payments set up from my accounts to her creditors. I removed myself as an authorized user on her credit cards and her as the beneficiary on my life insurance policy and retirement accounts. "What about the mortgage on her house?" Gregory asked. "You have been making those payments for 5 years." "Stop those too," I said firmly. "The house is in her name. The responsibility is hers." From there I went to the post office to forward all my mail to a new P.O. box. I called every service provider we shared, from the home security company to the lawn care service, and removed my name and payment information. Using my knowledge as a financial advisor, I was meticulous. I left no loose ends, no forgotten automatic payments, no financial ties that could pull me back into orbit around her. Back at my condo, I packed only what I truly needed: clothes, important documents, irreplaceable photos, and a few sentimental items from my father. Everything else I decided could be sold with the condo or donated. As I packed, I realized how little I actually cared about my possessions. So many had been purchased to impress my mother or meet her expectations of what my life should look like. The expensive artwork I never particularly liked, the formal dining set I never used, the designer clothes that never felt comfortable, all could stay behind. That evening I wrote my mother a letter. It took 7 drafts before I had something that expressed my feelings without anger or accusation. "Mom, you said the best gift would be for me to leave your life. I am giving you that gift. By the time you read this, I will be gone. The financial support I have provided over the years has ended. The house bills and all expenses are now solely your responsibility. This is not done out of anger but acceptance. You are right that our relationship has been based on obligation rather than love. I release us both from that obligation. Do not try to find me. I do not wish to be found. Cassandra." I sealed the letter in an envelope and drove to her house late that night. I slipped it under her door and walked away without looking back. That night, I checked into a hotel under a different name, paying cash. As I sat on the generic hotel bed, I felt a surreal mix of emotions, from searing grief to profound relief. For the first time in my life, I was not responsible for my mother's happiness, comfort, or financial security. The weight that lifted from my shoulders was so immense, I actually gasped aloud in the empty room. Over the next week, my plan unfolded with mechanical precision. James found a cash buyer for my condo, accepting 15% below market value for a quick private sale. I opened new bank accounts at a different institution and transferred my assets. I deactivated my social media accounts and got a new phone number. I took only what fit in my car, driving west, with no specific destination in mind. Each mile put physical distance between my old life and whatever would come next. I stopped checking my old email. I did not answer calls from unknown numbers. I severed every tether to my former existence. The first week of freedom was disorienting. Habit had me reaching for my phone to check on my mother, to make sure she had taken her medication, or to remind her of an upcoming appointment. I would catch myself planning Sunday visits that would never happen. At times, guilt would crash over me like a wave, leaving me breathless with doubt. But beneath the guilt and grief ran a current of something unfamiliar: possibility. For the first time, my decisions affected only me. My time was entirely my own. My resources, substantial, after years of professional success, were mine to direct as I chose. I had disappeared from my mother's life completely. What I did not expect was how thoroughly I would disappear from my own former life as well. The Cassandra, who had existed in Boston, the dutiful daughter constantly seeking approval, was gone too. Who would take her place remained to be seen. 1 week after I disappeared, my mother began trying to contact me. At first, her messages to my old email and voicemails to my disconnected number were irritated rather than concerned. "Cassandra, the lawn service says you canceled their contract. Call me immediately. The electric company claims the automatic payment was stopped. Fix this today. My prescriptions need refilling. Where are you?" She did not mention my letter. In her mind, I was still responsible for her life, regardless of what had happened or what I had clearly communicated. 10 days after I left, my former assistant, Megan, emailed my new address, which I had provided only to her and my therapist. "Your mother came to the office today," she wrote. "She was very upset, demanding to know where you were. Security had to escort her out when she started yelling. Is everything okay?" I thanked Megan for letting me know, but provided no details. The same day, Eleanor called my therapist's office, trying to get information about me. Bound by confidentiality, my therapist revealed nothing, but she did relay the message during our next phone session. "Your mother appears to be escalating, Dr. Winters," said carefully. "Eleanor said she has been calling everyone you know, becoming increasingly frantic. 2 weeks in, my mother discovered her house payment was overdue. This revelation, according to Eleanor's message to my therapist, sent her into a tailspin. She had not made a mortgage payment in 5 years, and had apparently forgotten the process entirely. Social media became her next battleground. Though I had deactivated my accounts, friends forwarded screenshots of her posts, which grew more dramatic by the day. "My daughter has abandoned me without warning," she wrote. "After all I sacrificed for her, she has left her elderly mother without support or care. Please, help me find her." The comments filled with sympathetic responses from people who knew only her version of events. A few who knew us both expressed skepticism, but were quickly shouted down by her supporters. 3 weeks after my disappearance, my mother received notice that her joint account with me had been frozen. According to Eleanor, who continued updating my therapist, this was when reality truly began to set in. "She went to the bank and made quite a scene," Eleanor reported. "They explained the account was frozen and suggested she open a new one with her own funds. She said she had no funds, that Cassandra handled all that." My mother had never bothered to understand her own financial situation. Despite having a modest pension from my father's job and Social Security income, she had always relied on my supplemental support to maintain her lifestyle. Without it, she faced a harsh reality. A month into my absence, my mother received notice that her credit card payments were past due. All 6 of her cards had been maxed out, and she had been making only minimum payments using my money. Now she faced over $40,000 in credit card debt with no way to pay it. When James Wilson placed a sold sign in front of my condo, my mother drove there in a panic, only to find new owners moving in. They had no information about me to share. 5 weeks after I left, my mother missed her second mortgage payment and received her first formal warning from the bank. This, coupled with her mounting credit card debt, caused her first health crisis. Eleanor found her collapsed in her kitchen, hyperventilating from an anxiety attack. At the hospital, her blood pressure was dangerously high, and the doctor prescribed medication for anxiety and hypertension. "She kept asking for you," Eleanor told my therapist. It was the first time I saw her actually worried about you rather than what you could do for her. After 6 weeks, my mother left her first voicemail that wasn't demanding or accusing. Her voice sounded smaller, older. Cassandra, I do not understand why you have done this. I need you to come home. I miss you. The last part sounded forced, unpracticed, as if expressing affection was a foreign language to her. 2 months after I left, my mother received foreclosure warnings. Her house, worth nearly $1 million in Brookline's expensive market, had substantial equity, but she had no idea how to access it or manage a sale. Eleanor, despite being 80 herself, helped my mother meet with a financial advisor who explained her situation in stark terms. Sell the house, pay off the debt, and find a more affordable living situation or face bankruptcy and foreclosure. Your mother finally broke down, Eleanor reported. She admitted that she drove you away. She showed me the letter you left. It was the first time I have seen her take responsibility for anything in the 40 years I have known her. 3 months after my disappearance, my mother wrote me a letter. Eleanor forwarded it to my therapist, who asked if I wanted to read it. I hesitated, but eventually agreed. The letter was unlike anything I had ever received from my mother. Her usual perfect penmanship was shaky, the paper wrinkled as if it had been crumpled and smoothed out multiple times. Cassandra, I have spent these months angry at you for abandoning me. Yesterday I found a photo album in the attic, pictures of you growing up that I had forgotten about. Looking at your face in those photos, I saw something I never allowed myself to see before: how much you were hurting even as a child because of me. I was not a good mother to you. I was jealous of your relationship with your father. After he died, I blamed you because blaming myself was too painful. I resented you for being young and having opportunities I never had. None of this is an excuse. I am not asking for money or help. The house is being sold next month. I am moving to a senior apartment that I can afford on my pension and Social Security. I understand why you left. I would have left too. I am sorry, Mom. The letter contained no demand.